Cool. Well, welcome everybody. I am so grateful to be here and to share my passion, my aliveness, my spirit, my soul, the things that have been driving me in my life and through my lineage. So starting there, my dad was a city manager and my mom and father, both here. It's really amazing. Happy to have them here.
That is a big step.
Yeah, it's amazing to introduce them into this. So my mom's father was a police chief of the Chicago suburb, one of the longest serving police chiefs in Chicagoland history. So I come from that lineage. And I started off by doing work that was around building technology for marathons and large running events. So this was like Chicago Marathon, New York Marathon, over 10 million people use the app and has over 30,000 five-star reviews in the Android and iOS app stores. Yes. So I've also had, during that time, around 10 years of research and development of building a conscious social network. And I moved to Boulder, Colorado specifically in 2014 to start that evolutionary journey. And I started by living in an intentional community because I don't think that we can really espouse what community is or means without actually living it and learning from it and learning from the elders who have been there in the past before us. So this has informed where I'm at now with Actualize Earth. It's the fourth platform that I've built. And it's now to this position of we have the opportunity to support individuals and our local areas and our earth in actualization, becoming and expressing the highest version of itself. And this is all informed by my backgrounds of intentional community, psychology, evolutionary biology, philosophy, and a degree in chemical engineering, which I am so grateful for, and one of the different pieces that I'll be bringing in around science.
You have a degree in
Chemical engineering.
chemical.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I want to start
Chemical engineering. That would be amazing too.
getting there.
I love chemicals. Sorry for all the questions. This is not a follow the show. It's exciting. Like do exactly. This is perfect. It's amazing.
Thank you. So, and it is perfect and amazing exactly in the way that it is because that's the expression of evolution of the caterpillar to butterfly. The butterfly can't become the butterfly without being the caterpillar. And so I don't think that the butterfly looks back at the caterpillar and says, fuck you. And this is exactly what Stephen was talking about in his talk earlier, that no right or wrong, good or bad, and the importance of us integrating all of ourselves. We wouldn't be here now without all of the energy that has brought us to be here. And this is the evolutionary pattern of the caterpillar to butterfly and why it's so important. Additionally, right, we can have these tools and they can be really amazing. And a hammer is a great example. You can build a house with a hammer or you can cause a lot of harm. You can have a gun, you can do things with it, or you could cause harm with it. And it's in the hands of the people that are behind that tool that impact what it does. And we see this in the advent of all these new different technologies that are coming out that are bringing a level of fear of what's going to happen. Well, if we lived in a culture of people that were aligned and oriented to the highest expression of self, highest expression of our local community, and highest expression of the earth, it changes the conversation. It changes the dynamic from where we are creating and how we are relating to each other. Are we causing harm or are we creating symbiosis and synergy? So in this, it also begs this really deep relationship. I do this a lot in this talk where I talk about two different sides of the equation that can be in highest expression together. And so there's this really beautiful story in our human culture and society in the evolution of philosophy. And about 2,500 years ago, there was a split in philosophy. There was the Pythagoreans who would break things down in their component shapes and geometries to understand it. And then there was the holistic. We are a living system inside of a living system inside of a living system. The Pythagoreans, this is where the philosophy that has guided our modern culture evolution of science comes from. Science comes from the Latin root scissor, to cut, cutting things into their component parts to understand it. And that is one way to break down reality and understand it. And there's a lot of value in it. And it's also become a guiding principle in our modern culture of how and why we create what we do. But it is very much not connected with the holism of living system inside of living system inside of living system. And this is the earth as a living system. This is us as a living system. This is the cells as a living system that you cannot cut apart to understand. And synergizing is what nature does best. It's like left brain and right brain, creative and analytic. How can we bring these two different, seemingly disparate philosophies together to inform how we can intentionally evolve, recognizing that we are both a part and a whole? Now, this also brings us to a really beautiful analogy. I really, like I shared, try to keep it in this polarity side of things, because in human culture, the more we can learn from our past, the more we have the opportunity to learn and grow and evolve without repeating the same patterns over and over. So if you look at the evolution of human culture, you see that, once agrarian culture started to happen and cities started to form, there was two main pillars that guided the majority of the evolution of our culture and society. And that was governance systems and religious systems. So those two have been fighting each other for thousands of years for power. And I think the easiest way to speak to it is governance systems, they deal with, you got literal food that needs to come in and literal shit that needs to go out. There's material resources and distribution and connection that needs to happen in the physical layer. And this is what Brother Tim was just talking about around civics. The other side of it is religion. We're part of something together. That's what religion really speaks to. We believe the same thing. So that also has been one of the biggest drivers of the feeling and sense of community and belonging in our culture. But it's also been incredibly divisive because it doesn't, it's fixed, it's mutable. It's almost like this is the way, we're telling you it's the way, as opposed to inspiring people to find it within themselves and find the synergy and the alignment within each other. And so, again, synergy between two different polarities: governance and religion. I think the easiest bridge to connect with is that the larger whole that we're a part of, the earth, is the impetus, the imperative, the reason, the purpose of how and why we orient and organize in our governance systems. One other aspect in the evolution of our human culture that I also find really fascinating is when you start mapping it to something like the chakra system. And I'll speak very briefly about each one. Like top left, you see the Neanderthals. They're in their survival mode and mindset. And that's what the root chakra is all about. That was what the primary collective consciousness was at that time. And then as soon as we got starting to get agriculture and different ways for people to come together, we started to form governance. We started to also, Greek culture. There was a lot of pleasure. And that's what the sacral energy is about. And as we started to see that evolve somewhat similarly, but continually to where we're at now, is the solar plexus energy, this yellow in the bottom, which is about the power over. And we see this through the exploitation and the manipulation and the control and dynamics that are created from that wanting to have power over. And this is where the collective energy is right now, or at least how I perceive it. And so this gives us a model, a map of where we're coming from and where we're going. And so many people here are speaking to this. And it's about coming to the heart chakra from a place of love, of connection, of recognition that we are individuals as well as part of a whole. And I just shared a lot of AI arts with you. And I also love technology and right relationship. This is a really beautiful image by a visionary artist named Mark Henson that also depicts this perceived duality of the beautiful worlds that we can work together and synergize with versus the world of chaos where we're using these tools for power and control. And again, this is a really beautiful image by Alex Gray, speaking to the whole tree of life and the hearts of the earth in that tree, and the beauty that can flow, the literal, it's literal tits on this tree of life with the milk of life running out, feeding the stream, feeding all of the animals. And it speaks to the abundance of earth and all of the abundance that it gives us. And I also just briefly want to share here, this is also where I took on the name Juicy, to embody that for myself, to live that for myself, as well as to inspire people to just the abundance that life is when we come together, recognize that we're part of a larger whole, and know that we are provided for in the same way that the skin cell in your arm is provided for by the body that it is a part of. I know this. I am on this path. That's why I'm here. Now, onto the fun part of evolutionary biology, because again, learning from patterns in our past. The more we can see where we've come from, the better we have a possibility to grow in a conscious way moving forward. So, curiosity, this image on the left, the circle. Does anybody know what it is? Okay. This is not. It is the phylogenetic family tree. This is what science has shown us. This is, it's theory, but there's a lot of evidence behind it to prove and back the claims of this, that the speciation and the distinction between different family, class, order, family, genus, species, and all of these types of things, that we are related. They can trace this back. It is a family tree. We are not separate from nature. We are in relationship with all of this plant life, with all of these bacteria, with all of life. And you are here, this tiny little sliver in this giant family tree. And there's one more thing I want to cover on this because it's incredibly important. Nature adapts. It's not the strongest, nor the most intelligent that survives. It's the one that's most adaptable to change. And the reason that we have all this speciation is because new and novel environments for different animals, plants, bacteria, mycelium, those novel environments created a feedback loop of evolution. And that feedback loop of evolution was necessary for us to be 100 trillion cells all working together. We have these senses, we interact with the world. The more that we can listen to those senses and receive the feedback and integrate that feedback, the more capacity we have to evolve and adapt to a situation. And I just want to tagline here that one of the things that I'm working on with Actualize, we have a well-being tool. What are we tracking? How can technology actually be used to support us in tracking? In the business world, you call it KPIs, key performance indexes. What are we measuring to see the well-being of the business? What are we seeing to see the well-being of an individual or our local community or the collective? The internet is such a powerful lens to receive that type of feedback, integrate it, especially when you start talking about how you can create collective data sets with AI, with intelligent questions that can create collective sense-making, like you're interacting with a collective consciousness. There are so many ways of integrating evolutionary feedback, meaningful feedback, by the use of technology and right relationship. One of the other patterns that we see in nature is called horizontal gene transfer. And so we know this, like on the vertical gene transfer, you have two parents and it creates a child, combinatorial genetics, and it creates an adaptation in a new way in the new child. And it takes time, you know that. What's really beautiful is the example in nature that is around horizontal gene transfer. Horizontal gene transfer is essentially, the best example is, a bacteria that gets into an antibiotic-rich environment that then the bacteria then adapts to. And then that bacteria starts saying, oh, hey, I figured out the code, guys. Take the DNA, adapt, evolve. We're in this together. Let's go. And that level of sharing, of the movement of information and sharing for a collective purpose of well-being, adaptation, and evolution is also something that we don't see in our culture very much. It actually is counterintuitive to the capitalistic mindset of having an intellectual property, holding it down, and banking as much as you can for yourself about it. And this is why that like fundamental shift in consciousness is so deeply needed to land, so that we can start orienting our systems with this level of awareness informed by our DNA and informed by these evolutionary patterns. And this kind of brings it to what weaves it all together. And that is the term endosymbiotic evolution. So this is like the distinction between, in biology, the prokaryotes and the eukaryotes. And very simply put, prokaryotes are simple bacteria and viruses. They're like floating strands of DNA, and they have pretty limited capacities. They're like, they do one thing. It's where the powerhouse of our cells came from mitochondria, and also where the chloroplast came from. That is like the mitochondria of plants. And those happened because those things that did that one task of like metabolizing energy from either a light or oxygen, those things then essentially integrated into a cell. So the mitochondria and the chlorophyll, all these different things, started working together with different organelles, and you started to get greater level of complexity. And this complexity is, what we see with single cell going to multicellular organisms, going to hundreds of trillions of cells in the human body. We wouldn't be able to work together as a unified whole, as a human, without a common purpose that each of those cells is working for. And if that doesn't happen in the human body, you label that a cancer and detrimental to the whole that it's a part of. And this then informs, like I shared in the philosophy aspect of it earlier, going from holistic thinking, single cell, multi-cell, hundreds of trillion cells, planet, and how it's all related together for the common interest of the whole. So weaving together this evolutionary technology, it's important for us to build from a knowledge of understanding of our human history, as well as our biological history and evolution. And you can have the best tool in the world, but it depends on whose hands it's in and the conscious behind it. So doing anything requires a shift in consciousness to use the tools and technology in right relationship with that understanding of the whole that we're a part of. So I wanted to leave some time for Q&A because I think it's a great opportunity to receive feedback and evolve. And just wanted to share one beautiful image here. This is from a planetarium show that I did in 2015 with Andre Jones. It was his first planetarium show. I just happened to be aligned in this magical way to get brought in to produce the event to help bring it together. And it was an opportunity where we brought together different glass blowers and visionary artists and painters and jewelers. And it was an evening of really taking in the beauty of what we can create when we follow our purpose, our passion, and the aliveness that drives us. You might call that the evolutionary impulse. Following that drive. That is what I want to inspire. To be that beacon of light, to share that, so that we can create a more beautiful world together and share it together. Thank you. Me personally, or how this can spread? Me personally. I think that we're all beacons of light in our own ways. These types of events, like regenerative culture events that Brad has been producing for, I can at least trace it to 2016 or 17. These types of events are like creating a container for consciousness to evolve. And each of us have these different sparks that light us up. And so when we come together, it's an opportunity for those sparks to light each other up, to become more whole in who we are. Me personally, it's not about me. It's about each of us being in our unique genius. Each of us sharing those gifts, being inspired by each other. Because, if we look at Again, a pattern in evolution and a pattern in our human culture and history. The the people like Jesus, the people like Buddha, these people who kind of were these spiritual gurus that people started to follow. As soon as they got cut off, you know, and however you want to say that, in whatever way, it became like an echo chamber of passing on. Well, this is what was said. There's value in that. There's importance in that. And then there's also the importance of creating a context and environment for people to discover it for themselves without there being any one central focal point that can be taken out that would destroy the movement. There's a really interesting experiment in science that I love that kind of speaks to this, and it's about metronomes. So if you have a platform that's like a can and then a wooden board over it, and you put a metronome on it, you put two metronomes, they'll eventually line up. And if you have like 35 metronomes and you add one, it'll sync up faster. If you had 100 metronomes that are all in alignment, you add one, it comes even faster into alignment. And also, just to speak of another pattern in nature, because I also think it's really important, and also to what you were just speaking to, of starting small. Because the natural growth pattern that we see in life, we see it everywhere. It's the phi spiral. It's the golden ratio. This is also what people like Da Vinci spent like their entire life trying to depict and connect with in the human body and everywhere in nature. And so the Fibonacci sequence models this, and it goes 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and it builds up and eventually converges to the golden ratio. But that level of growth is so important. It's also what we see in like the spiraling of tree leaves and these types of things, because it's like this natural way to maximize the amount of energy that can come into a system. And what's really interesting about it, because the Fibonacci sequence approximates it, the next rung that you add on is never more than what you had previously. So you have that inertia momentum that has already been building, and then you're adding on a little bit more, but a little less than 50%, so that it can continue to have its coherence as it grows. So we're based in Boulder, Colorado. I've focused my attention in the local community that I live in. Been developing it for 10 years. Actualize has been alive for a year in this current iteration. And we currently have, it's primarily an event app supporting people in the community coming together and sharing their gifts. And this really is anything from like men's groups, women's groups, authentic relating, circling, ecstatic dance. There's so many different ways that people in the community have like stepped up and said, I want to share that. I would really love to see more sound healings. I would really love to see more community coming together over potlucks. And it brings people together, and it empowers people in their purpose and to share their codes, which also was like I was speaking to, it's not putting any one person or thing in the center of it. But we do need to have that common purpose. And that's what Actualize Earth stands for and what it means to support individuals in their actualization, our local communities in actualizing, and our planet. So we have a functioning app. We're currently doing like 15 to 20K a month in ticket sales. There's, like I said, 3 to 7 events happening every single day. Well, in total, about 6,000. In Boulder, it's about 4,500. I mean, the most comparable thing you might say is Facebook. So I mean, that's like kind of the competitor. You might also say Eventbrite, but there's a different quality, of the community.
Oh yeah, sure, no question. My question is more like just numbers wise. Eventually, I'm assuming you would probably only outperform Eventbrite potentially for this demographic that you're after, right?
Yes, totally.
And so you have local market leadership already.
Yes, and that's part of where I think like the innovative growth strategy of this is, because we already know, I mean, I already know, as well as a number of people on my team, some high-level networkers and influencers, event producers in different locations. And so really kind of looking at them as the opportunity to help it spread and grow, because those are the people who have already developed some level of coherence in a network in their local area. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to you about this and something I'll be working on.
I'd love that. And I just wanted to share this because we also have a refer tree. So who referred who? And so you can actually see here that like this referrer tree, which is almost kind of like the roots, right? It goes to like 8 levels of depth. This person referred this person, referred this person, referred this person, referred this person. And it kind of speaks to the virality of it and the way that it can propagate.